complex. So is our mental health. It cannot be understood by diagnosis alone. Our philosophy is treat the person, not the mental illness.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Humanizing Mental Health. I'm Jeremy Alcorn.
I'm Trent Nagers.
And I'm Amy Alcorn-Henricks. And past viewers, you may notice that in many of our podcasts, a common theme has been connection and attachment. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing that relates to these themes, connection and attachment, with our current lives. So, Trent, I'm curious to hear what you've got to say about that.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Hi, everybody. I may sound like I'm not as peppy as usual. That's because over the last week, I've had something happen which really speaks to attachment in my life. For those of you that have heard my story already, or may have not, I'm in a wheelchair. I have cerebral palsy, and one thing with my specific disability is that I require caregivers to help me out on a daily basis, both in the morning and in the evening. And one thing for me with I'm on the surface, that can sound like a very transactional sort of relationship. Somebody coming in, doing my care, and leaving. But for me, a lot of these individuals come in, and it's not just a transactional relationship. Actually, it's a very complex relationship. And I've had a rupture in that relationship about, literally a week ago, in a couple of hours. A caregiver that I've had for 4 years came to me and literally said to me, "I'm going to be done at the end of this week." And this was a person that helped me out for 23 hours a week, anywhere from 2 to 5 hours in the morning, and I had to come to terms with and try to replace that individual in the course of a week. So I've got a huge attachment rupture, and I'm trying to come to terms with what that means and how do I move forward.
Yeah, in fact, Trent, I really appreciate you being willing to talk about this. And one of the things that we're really kind of clear about, and that is that we're investigating, or maybe that's the wrong word, using curiosity to understand the experience, that this conversation isn't about the other person or the other party, not about blame or anything of that nature, because actually, as I understand, this is not the first time that this sort of thing has happened in your life.
No. I mean, I've had caregivers come and go all of the time, but this is like the third time in my life where I've had a serious disruption where it's literally physically painful.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And certainly not to diminish your pain at all. In fact, that's what this is about being able to look at and talk about and understand the minutia, the process about what this means and what the details around what this looks like for you.
Yeah, and like as you bring that up, I when I texted you about this, I remember specifically you had brought up the concept of logotherapy, where there is no pain without reward, or pain without
so suffering without meaning.
Suffering without meaning, and that's really what I'm trying to do through this podcast today. So let me back up. So I'll give you a little bit of context with this individual. So this individual, as I said, came into my life 4 years ago, and we really had we went through a lot of things together. Now, previous to this, I'm used to having staff turnover. Like most people would last, maybe 6 months, 3 months, 2 months, or even a couple of weeks. So this is the longest ever. And so she wasn't even there for for 4 years, a full length of time. But we even went through the process of her husband actually did my care, and he actually ended up passing away during that.
So really what you're describing is a multifaceted relationship. Like, while you have this business relationship, the nature of the care that is provided and the journey that you walked through in life together changes the closeness or dynamics of that attachment.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's, and I mean, you have to look at like people come in, and it's through the experiences that we have together, and the fact that literally care is physically and emotionally intimate, and the fact that they're touching my body, like they're here for a long period of time. We have discussions. So, and even like when they talk about having, bathing, like with hot water, there is the release of oxytocin. So if you think about it, right, oxytocin being the bonding agent, I'm bonded to these people on many different levels, and it's about, I rely on them for making sure that everything runs well. Like really, they provide all of my basic needs. They put me in my chair in the morning, and until I'm in my chair, I'm completely vulnerable. And like I had mentioned to you, it's like it's like having a child-like attachment to someone, because you're reliant on them so much. And when you have somebody around for that length of time, there's a consistency and sort of an expectation. And when they leave, it's like, okay, I have that childlike attachment, but I'm an adult, so I need to pick up and move. So it's about how do you pick up and move.
Sure. In fact, I think several things jump through my mind as you're saying this. Before I put out something else, I just want to give you a chance if anything has kind of knocked loose for you in terms of your thoughts.
Well, as Trent was talking, my mind kind of started flowing with different ideas as well. One idea that I was thinking of is that I think all human beings have attachment needs. And of course, everybody is going to have different needs. And Trent has his own specific needs, and I have my own specific needs. And it's more than just physical, too. It's emotional. We're all social creatures. Human beings rely on each other socially. And sure, some people are more introverted or more extroverted, but at the end of the day, even the most introverted person needs at least one other person, And I guess I want to share an experience. So I'm out in Idaho, and where I live, there's a lot of students here, but I'm not actually attending the school here. I'm going to school at the U of C online, and I'm not working either because I had to work on getting certain documentation to be able to work legally. So I haven't really been able to go out and actually meet people and make friends. And that was really hard for me because I got married and moved here. My husband is so busy working and doing school. He hasn't really been able to make friends either. So we've got each other, but it's been really hard, and our families live far away. So when I see his family or my family, I feel so much more connected. And when they leave, it like almost physically hurts in my chest because it just feels so like, oh man, it's just me and Mike again. We're just alone again. But recently I got a pet fish, and it sounds silly, but that pet fish has made me so much happier because what I've needed in my life is to have something that I could nourish and to provide for. And this fish, just feeding it makes me happy. And so I think everybody has their own needs, but at the end of the day, what we really need is connection. And whether that be physical or emotional or whatever else, it's all the same in of itself. It's all one ball that connects together.
Where did you become so wise?
Yeah, I was just going to say...
Probably from you two.
I was going to say, she is definitely her father's daughter.
Amy, I am your father.
Yeah. No, yeah. And, I can really, like when you talk about your fish, like, because, like that reciprocal relationship with that. And if you look at like what an animal is, I mean, like it's sort of that unconditional love. And I think that that's something, like you said, that we all need. And it's a need to be needed. And I think that is so key, because even for myself with my caregivers, like I jokingly say I earn my world's best boss mug every single day, because for me, like I may only be able to pay $18.50 an hour, but I try to create an environment in which people are welcome, and that like this is not just a workplace, but you're coming into a home, a welcoming environment. That's not just for me, but that's for them to create the dynamic so that we do have that ability to connect. So, if my caregivers want to say, hey, can I come in 30 minutes late, or, they have something with their kids, or, things go on, or for me, like I'll offer them coffee if they drink coffee, or whatever it is, because that's just not about me, but that's also about them.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, two things come up for me, and I'll try to track back to the second one. The first thing that comes up for me is, I imagine, and perhaps some of our listeners are thinking about this as well, and they're going, where does boundaries fit within this? And I imagine actually there's been people that have given you this message that it's like, actually, Trent, you need to change your boundaries. You need to strengthen boundaries or create boundaries. And I think that my response to them would be, you don't understand.
Yeah, no, and I've had family members tell me that they're just employees. Treat them like employees. They're just there to do a job. No, they're not. And I'm like, yeah, it's you can't just do that, because for me, that's like working in a sterile hospital environment. And I mean, even there too, if you actually talk to nurses and doctors, they talk about the social determinants of health, and they talk about how important it is to make sure that that those needs are met. I mean, like as social workers, we would call them, biopsychosocial needs, but they call it the social determinants of health. Yeah, and to just have like hard boundaries where it's yes sir, no sir. Like, is that really how you want to be greeted in the morning? Good morning, sir. Here's your coffee. Thank you.
For sure.
Have a good day.
In fact, what is the cost? I think that becomes the question. Is to those people out there that have said, well, what you need to do is change your boundaries. You're like, what they're telling you is your heart is getting hurt too often. And so if you don't want your heart to be hurt, then you need to change how much you let someone into your life. But what does that mean? What's the cost of closing your heart to a certain degree? Well, you might not risk the pain when there is a rupture in that relationship. You miss out on all the joy that is the possibility of the connection that you could have with this human being.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, because for me, it's those intimate, all those little moments where you share a joke, or like with this caregiver. I remember specifically there was one evening before we had the office Christmas party. We had that manual wheelchair. Do you remember that one that I had brought in?
I do. I remember the manual wheelchair. I remember lifting you up the stairs into the office. So yeah.
Yeah. And like that evening that I had it, she was like, "Oh, cool. Let's play with the chair." So like she's zipping around in the chair, and she's using my grabber, and it's like, like that's kind of a friendly interaction, but it's moments like that humanize, both her and I, and humanize the environment. And it's those things that even though you have the pain of the loss, you have to, like, what is joy without pain? What is light without dark? You don't know one if you can't define light without darkness.
In fact, I ask you, Trent, is it worth it?
It hurts right now, but I wouldn't give it up.
So that says something, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think it does. Yeah, because I know who I am. I know the cost that it brings. And even though there are sometimes when I say, no, I don't want to pay that cost at the end of the day, I've been doing it this way. So there's something inside of me that knows that it's right, or else I would be cold. I would be calculating. I would be Ebenezer Scrooge, as it were.
Yeah, and you'd be inauthentic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then who are you if you're not authentic?
Yeah. Well, if I'm not authentic with them, then, to me, it brings me back to sort of the Star Wars analogy. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. If I close myself off from other people, I close myself off from myself, and all I see is the need, like everything in calculation. And then, maybe then I take that negativity and I turn it in on myself. And that, to me, is not a price that I'm willing to pay.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I see, Amy, you ready to jump in, and go ahead. I have a follow-up question, I think, specifically for you.
Well, I've got a question for the viewers, actually. I think there's a lot of people who may confuse grief with depression, and you both are certified therapists. I want to hear what you think about the difference between natural, normal, human grief and actual depression that lasts a long time and inflicts people's lives.
Sure. And then I'll circle back. That second point I was going to make is a follow-up question for you, Amy, and I'll circle back to that after your question.
Nice.
Yeah, okay.
So the question is, what's the difference between grieving and depression?
From my point of view and from the research that I've done is that grief comes from a specific, something that specifically has happened, something that, it can be pinpointed. And grieving can take, everybody grieves in their own time. So it could be a prolonged process or a short process. Whereas for me, depression is just sort of a general malaise or a general feeling of always being down, over 6 weeks or more, that really is not focused on one specific thing. In fact, it may be a collection of things over time. Is that kind of how you understand it,
Sure.
Jared?
Like the time frame DSM is minimum 2 weeks. So yeah, I just want to make sure that we have that kind of accuracy, not to criticize you.
No, I appreciate that.
It's just I totally hear where you're coming from. In fact, if I could use a example that gives a contrast. So one example is from my own life. And the other is during a time I was working for the military. So I was working for the military. We get this. We have a case conference, and the person goes through the case that they just had a few days before. The individual that came in just had a relationship breakup, and they were in a terrible place and unconsolable, crying really hard, and so forth. And this was a social worker. The social worker connected with the medical officer, the doctor, and consulted, and they got a medication started, an antidepressant that day. And everybody else in the room kind of sat like this. Yeah, just silence, because they went, that was not an appropriate response. They just lost a major relationship. This is not depression. Mm-hmm. It doesn't meet the criteria of depression. You have to have beyond 2 weeks where you have either loss of interest in things or low mood all day or almost every single day, that wasn't an appropriate response. Don't go starting people on drugs because they just lost a relationship. That's not a good idea. Mm-hmm. Now, if we can make a comparison point, and that is in my own life, during a time, and I've shared part of the story before, but during the time that I was a missionary, my mom died suddenly, and I didn't come home. And in that first few weeks, I wasn't sleeping and I was throwing up after most meals, and that's actually probably a pretty reasonable response to that kind of sudden loss. It's just that then almost 7 months later, I'm still almost not eating at all. And I'm sleeping less than 2 hours a night and have an absolute flatness of affect. No sense that there ever would be something that in which I would feel cheerful again. And so then you start to go, wait a minute. That far into this response, while the beginning point was a bereavement issue, this looks much more complex now, and it's become something else. And someone could say, yeah, well, this looks like a complex grief. They meet the criteria of a depressed state. Of course, but what do we say? We say, treat the person, not the diagnosis. Yeah. You know, what was it that was going on for me? Had to do with the intricacies of the relationship with my mom, who was a wonderful human being, but it didn't change the fact that there was something wrong in my relationship, that I felt this sense of need to make sure that I was good enough, and that was something I had to resolve. And even years later, after the depressive symptoms went away, it still made a difference in terms of how I related to people. And until I had worked that through, then it always would have.
Thanks for answering that question.
Yeah, in fact, can I follow?
I think that was great feedback.
Yeah, if I could do that follow-up part. So that second piece that I was thinking about is, coincidentally enough, Trent, we have one of your former caregivers with us in this podcast.
Yes, we do. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, well, that's true. So, Amy, like we've talked about it before, and I mentioned it right at the very beginning. Or I don't know. Do you want to? Sorry, we should do context. How long did you actually work for me, Amy? I think it was 2 years, wasn't it?
Maybe with the total time,
yeah,
I think
so,
maybe around 2 years.
So perhaps you can give that reflective point around that complexity of what this kind of dual relationship looks like. Like from your experience with Trent, then I don't think that you would identify your relationship as simply an employer-employee or someone receiving care, someone giving care. Maybe speak to some of the complexity of that for yourself, from your side of that relationship.
Well, for myself, I think I should clarify that I didn't have another job before Trent. Trent was my first job, which I got really lucky because I was only 18 years old, and I imagine that was scary for Trent, but he knew my dad, so he thought, oh, well, maybe this girl will be good.
Or maybe he let you have a chance despite your dad and the rotten guy he is.
I remember when because I interviewed you at the Medicine Mall, and I will always remember your initial interview because here comes Amy in like jean jacket, stuff all over it, and she's wearing sunglasses. I'm trying to sit there, talk with her, and I'm asking my standard interview questions. She's crouching forward. She can't really hear me. She doesn't take off her sunglasses. And I'm sitting there going, okay.
But I told you why I had sunglasses, right?
Oh, yeah. No. Well, no.
It wasn't because you did a bunch of cocaine that morning.
No. You know, I learned later on what it meant, and of course, it was because of your issue, your light sensitivity at the time. But for me, I'm like, okay, this is a very unique
You're like,
individual.
what is this? Am I interviewing a rock star?
Yeah,
Hey, come on. You don't have a pet monkey, do you? You have a pet monkey?
I was thinking more Joan Jett. I like rock and roll.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, well, she's 18. All right, and I was like, I saw something there in you at the time, and I was like, okay, let's, because I remember, Jerry, you told me, you're like, you know what? Whatever it is between you and Amy, that's business. This has nothing to do with our relationship. And I was like, okay, like Jerry set up the boundaries. It's like, but I'm going to give her a try. And you know what? The growth that I saw in you, even though I clearly found out you're not a morning person and you're not quite an evening person, you're an afternoon person. It was like, like everyone else, it got a little bit rocky, but for me, you can speak to this for yourself, Amy, the conversations that you and I would have, to me, like you learned from me and I learned from you because, I don't know, I felt that I shared some of my academic knowledge. You shared your youthful exuberance and the knowledge that you had, and we had just like this great Greek or Roman forum sometimes as we're preparing for the evening or the day, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it was definitely nice. Like, I was doing school part-time, and so with different classes that I'd be taking, Trent would ask me about them, and I'd start talking, and he would give supplementary like information to me, where I'm like, oh, that's cool, that's helpful, that's awesome. And yeah, it was really nice because, at least for myself, I find it a lot easier to retain information and learn if I have somebody to actually talk to about it. And so that was really awesome to have Trent as a friend to talk to. And yeah, for me, Trent was my employer, but he was also my friend, and he still is my friend. And so that's something that I really liked about working for him, because it was meaningful for me. And like, that's a job I'd love to do way more than like retail or fast food. I've never done those jobs before, but I've seen people do them and they get tired out so easily. Like, my husband worked at McDonald's and he just got drained because of like how people treated him, and it just wasn't meaningful to him. And so working for Trent was very meaningful, and I appreciated the opportunity.
In fact, if I could kind of go with your journey a little bit in that connection. So if you think about when you were first starting and you were thinking about how comfortable you are or what you thought, versus how it actually turned out, tell me about that. Tell me about what your experience was actually like versus what you thought it was going to be like.
Well, maybe I'll share with you my first day. I don't know if you remember my first day, Trent. Oh, you're smirking. The first day I got there, it was the end of January, and so it was cold. And I tried to get in, and the key, like, was not working. I was like, oh my goodness, I already cannot get into the house. Like, I'm already failing at this. It's my first day on the job. I'm failing. Somehow I was able to get in. I don't know how that happened, because that wasn't even the right key to the house.
No, but okay, but we also have to, there's further detail, because you didn't just meet me that day or interact with me. You ended up interacting with my brother. Do you remember? Yeah. And he brought over the blowtorch.
Yeah, because we ended up leaving the house to go shopping or something, or was it going to work out? I don't really remember, but we came back and the door was frozen solid, and I was like, oh my goodness, I can't even open up the door, like, I'm failing at life. And like, I was so nervous, and Trent was like, here, let me try. And of course, Trent couldn't open it either because it was the wrong key. So we went to Canadian Tire to get some of that like melting stuff to melt the lock, and that didn't work either. So then we sat in his van for like a few hours until his brother came over with the blowtorch.
Yeah, and
it was quite the day.
Yeah, and my brother is he uses a lot of colorful language and expletives. Yeah, like my brother is he's an oil field rigger, so here's Amy, 18 years old, and I'm in my mind, I'm like, oh, Jeremy's gonna just what have I exposed his daughter to?
It's okay. I've been to high school.
He's a real roughneck then, eh?
Oh yeah.
Like that's the term for a specific job in the oil field, isn't it? Roughneck.
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah. He's not.
Maybe he's not a roughneck. Maybe he's something else.
No. He runs a vac truck. And
yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, the first day was absolutely crazy, and so yeah, that heightened my anxiety a lot. But I think looking back, I had a lot of anxieties at first. This was my first job, and I was expected to care for someone. But I'm really grateful that Trent was so chill about everything. Like, he's very good at explaining what I needed to do and just being easy on me. I mean, I made a few mistakes here and there, but at the end of the day, I think I did a fairly good job.
And I have another specific question. That is, let's say that we change your experience. So we're going to change your experience. What we're going to do is we're going to reset Trent, and he's going to come with boundaries. He's going to have his heart protected so that he doesn't get hurt when eventually you leave. So he's not going to get close to you. He's not going to get to know you. What would you have lost?
I think I would have lost, getting to know the actual Trent. Like, if he were to do that right now, I'd be like, Trent, what's wrong? What's up? Because that'd be weird to me. But if that's how he was when I was getting to know him, I'd feel kind of awkward, or there's got to be some, like, affection in a relationship. There's got to be some amount of trust and love and care going both ways. And so if I don't see that coming from him, it just kind of feels a bit empty.
And so that specifically, I'm going to push you on this a little bit, because you got to know Trent. What did you actually gain from that?
Well, I gained a friend. I gained a whole relationship. I gained somebody who I could talk to. And, I gained assets that Trent has to offer to me, like his knowledge and his taste in music and fun drives to the leisure center, listening to his music or talking. I gained a lot. I gained a lot of memories too and fun times.
And Trent,
I could go on and on and on, but it would take a while.
What about for you, Trent? Let's say that you locked your heart. That was it. I'm not going to let somebody in because I'm not going to get hurt again when they leave. Then what would you have lost?
Very much like Amy said, I think I would have lost a friend. I would have lost a real relationship. I think I would have lost sort of my compassion, my humanity, my patience. Because for me, like, I when I have some, and I know that there are people that are very transactional, persons with disabilities that are very transactional, and they're short. They want things their way, only their way, and not to judge them because they have their own experiences. They walk their own path. But for me, like, if I were to lock my heart, it would end up being I wouldn't see Amy as a person. I would see her as a means to an end. Yeah,
something jumped into my head, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it's like this kind of acute pain that you have experienced over this last week. You would trade that out for an emptiness that you would experience kind of all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't sound like a fair trade.
No, and I almost wonder, like, I almost feel like I would just be stuck in an emotional void. I'm kind of I'm thinking about, if you've ever seen the movie Click with Adam Sandler.
Yeah, where he's got the remote control, and he gets to rewind, fast forward life.
Yeah. Like, do you know where he, like, and like the remote eventually just starts going through, because like it gets pre-programmed. So if you skip sickness, if you skip the awkward events, if you skip things, then you only have these small snippets of life that like life loses all meaning. My caregivers provide me meaning.
And they're not the only thing that provides you meaning.
No.
But it's a very important part. And for somebody to tell you you're doing things wrong because you're choosing to get too close, it's not their life.
No. I mean, and you're absolutely right. Looking at it, I think what I need to do, and I mean, I've been doing the best I can this week, where it's somebody said to me, or one of my other caregivers, it's really quite funny, because I was texting her because like I'm hurting, and so she says to me, she says, you need to focus on yourself now. That person is on their journey, you're on yours. You need to do you need to do your self-care and just trust that relationship will be there if they choose for it to be there. I hire some very insightful people.
Wow. That person's Yoda? Oh, wait. They would have said that backward.
No. I'll say this. This person, and I'll be honest, this is another person I wasn't really quite sure about. I mean, initially when I met her, I was like, okay, am I really going to be able to get along with this person? But the one thing that I've really learned for me with having caregivers is that if I'm open, I will find the value in them. If I'm willing to be patient, they will add something to my life if I let them.
Mm-hmm. And if you put up boundaries, they won't add anything to your life.
No, they won't. Yeah. Wow.
Something I want to say just quickly is I think there's different types of boundaries. Like, I think the boundaries that you're talking about are big walls of this is my space, this is yours, don't come into my space. But I think that there's some boundaries that are necessary in relationships with people. There's some people that may bring some drama or toxicity into your life, and you don't have to allow that.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Speaking, and I appreciate that. I can hear Jeremy wanting to bring out his famous kidney analogy, but wait. I can actually tell you about caregivers that I have had that have taken advantage of me and that have hurt me. Where they have taken control and they have run my life because I've been so open, and for me, like you say, I'm open. So it's like learning when do I bring down the barrier, or when do I go from permeable, semi-permeable to completely opaque? Just to bring in some of Jeremy's kidney analogy. And at those times, it's like, how do you? Because for me, I start 100% open. But what do you do when they violate that? How do you step in? And as my one friend who's an HR manager is, you have to be the boss sometimes. That's the one thing that I struggle with. I have the dual relationship, or I have a trifecta of a relationship where and that was going to be one of the titles of this podcast that you suggested, Jeremy, where it's boss, friend. What was the third one? No, but sorry.
Let's see. Tyrant? No, it wasn't tyrant. Pirate? No, it wasn't. No. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
No, but I in social work, one of the things that they warn us away from is having dual relationships. Because that can cloud your judgment. You can't have clinical judgment with people, or I should say, it's not really, So, but for me, when it comes to having caregivers, I'm still learning how to manage dual relationships.
Sure. In fact, I think that that you mentioned the kidney analogy, and if it's okay, I'll go ahead and
bust out that chestnut.
So I find in nature, this is like one of the best metaphors for how to live life. And your kidneys are made up of nephrons, a bunch of tubes. And what happens is it creates balance because your environment always changes, and maybe you don't have access to water. And if your body didn't know how to change the boundaries inside of it, then you would die because you would die from dehydration. Now, the other side of it is that if you take in too much water, you'll actually get water intoxication, and you can die from that as well. So what happens is when there is a lot of water inside your body, then your kidney, the tubes inside of it, the tubes will actually become rigid so that it moves the water out. And if there isn't enough water in your body, then the tubes become permeable so that water can be reabsorbed into your body. And the idea of having a boundary is not that you set a fence or, a brick wall. The idea of a boundary is more like your kidney. That is, how do I understand what is happening for me and in the context of this situation, and how do I adjust what I'm doing to maintain a homeostasis in my life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and thank you for busting that old chestnut out. And, I know people will say, well, just do that. I just put up the boundary. And for me, it's about, okay, how do I manage that with physical safety too?
Yeah. And maybe simply because you're hurt right now doesn't mean that you didn't have good boundaries.
No.
Maybe that's just the nature of life, that no matter what you do, at some point you're going to lose somebody that is close to you through a variety of different ways. This is the dynamic of your life, is one in which coming and going from your care is a risk to you. Mm-hmm. Well, because you need to have a human connection, and there is going to be a turnover. That's the nature of your dynamic.
Yeah. Well, and I'm almost wondering there too. Well, when you say risk, I almost want to lapse into a Star Trek quote by William Shatner, but I'm not going to. Even though that is my favorite one.
You've used it before, I think.
Yeah. Risk is our business. That's what the Starship is about. Yeah. But no, I appreciate that you say risk, but when I hear that, I almost can we reframe that differently?
Oh, sure. In fact, I have these coins that have been given to me, challenge coins. And the interesting thing about a coin is you can't just put one side of a coin in your pocket. Mm-hmm. And so when we're looking at this coin, what's the other side of the coin? The other side of the coin is reward.
I like that. Yeah. So if you're going to spend this coin, you have to just realize that there is that duality.
Risk, reward. Mm-hmm. If you set really high boundaries in your life, you diminish risk, but you also diminish reward, or the possibility for reward.
Mm-hmm. And when I hear that too, I think to myself, I don't think that there is a perfect balance. I don't think there ever will be for anyone.
Yeah. If you diminish risk, okay, I'm not going to buy a dog because it's going to die sometime. Mm-hmm. Well, then you just lost a ton of connection that you could have had in your life. Now, maybe that was okay. Maybe a dog isn't what you need. But just an example, if the reason that you're not getting a dog is because it's going to die, then you don't understand the point of the journey.
Yeah. And you know what? I think that it's not really about the end, but it's about everything in between. That's really important. And the one thing that And I really appreciate you saying that, because even though some people will say, oh, you shouldn't keep text messages, you shouldn't keep pictures, of people that have gone. For me, I keep pictures of caregivers or different things that we do, or like I'll go back and I'll revisit those memories, because I mean, if we even go and look at, if you've ever watched the movie Inside Out, where it's looking at the various colors of Riley's memories at the end, is that the one memory at one point can be bittersweet. It can be happy. That's why memories are complex.
Yeah, for sure. Like that whole position around this has been integrated. And because it's been integrated, then it's not so painful. I can have memories of my mom without feeling pain. Why? Because the sense of loss has been integrated.
Mm. Yeah. And
another thing that I wanted to mention is that sometimes we'll see loss as the end of a journey or the end of a chapter, but at the end of each chapter, there's going to be a new chapter and a new beginning. For me, when I went off to get married last spring, it was awesome because I got to get married, but it was also really sad because my family couldn't be there to watch me get married. And as I look back on that, I do feel sad, but I also look back on the whole year, well, it's almost been a year, that I've had with my husband, and I see how many memories and fun things we've been able to do together. Sure, we haven't had very many friends, but we've been able to spend a lot of time together because we don't really have many other people. And what a perfect opportunity, especially in our marriage when life will get busy eventually, right? And that part is joyful for me. So sometimes things begin with sadness, but you look back and you really see all the joy in it. And sometimes there's sprinkles of sadness throughout and sprinkles of joy throughout. Sometimes it's like a swamp water slushie that you get at the Mac store, Like if you get a whole bunch of different flavors, still tastes good,
Maybe to you.
That's what I thought of.
I was like, are you challenging me for the crown of analogies?
Whoa, swamp water slushy. We're taking things to a whole new level.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of something. I was trying to think of food, but that's what I thought of.
That one's got Mountain Dew and some root beer. And
but I like that analogy because the memory itself could have layers depending upon how you mix it, or as you suck down, and that swamp water slushy, never really ends. But as we know, as we access memories, they're constantly changing.
Yeah, we influence them.
Yeah.
As you access them, you influence them.
Yeah.
So how your current mood is when you access that memory will also influence the memory as you put it away. And a variety of things. All of a sudden, a new piece of information comes to me, and then the meaning of what things meant in the past all of a sudden become altered. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I and that's I almost think to myself, like as I look back on this week, or as I've gone even from day to day, as my or hour to hour, sometimes as my mood has changed, as I get back out of this over the next couple of weeks, I get some stability, I get some new people in, things change. Like this part that again that was painful, I think the pain will still be there, but it will, if I use it properly, and which I think this podcast is. This is a moment of growth.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I love this because I don't know that I'm actually correct. I don't know that this is actually true. I just look at you, Trent. I look at your affect. And you seem to actually be different in this moment in time than you were 45 minutes ago.
Yeah, like I feel you both of you, all of you are kind of helping me to process and really look at this, and I feel greatly attuned to all three of you, even though Amy is not in the room with us. I feel the connection, and I appreciate that. And then I think that there is this. I feel a greater sense of hope. You've restoked my fires a little bit, and that's the thing too. Like when we look at, I'm trying to remember the exact terms. When you're talking with individuals, the difference between something, a conversation that is meaningful, it's where you're not going back and ruminating, but you're actually, you all have helped me to gain greater insight. Mm-hmm. This is, further insight. And I think that when we're going through a painful time like this, because I was thinking about it, like before I'd gotten together with all of you, like I was phoning various people, and what I was doing is I was just recycling my narrative of a loss. Mm-hmm. And what this is that we've taken that spiral of loss and we're starting to turn it into something greater, something different, a path towards, what could be the future.
In fact, let's pull that full circle. We talked about logotherapy at the start,
mm-hmm.
which is Dr. Frankl, who was a Jewish psychiatrist that was in the concentration camps in World War II. And we said at the start that suffering without purpose is meaningless. And that's why I jumped on board very quickly to say, yeah, let's do an episode about this, because you can take that experience and somebody else is going to benefit from it. Mm-hmm. Someone else is going to be able to understand, the pain, the grief that I'm experiencing, although the situation isn't identical, that loss and the questions that I've had about, well, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe I need to change my boundaries. Maybe, and all of those things then become a meaningful conversation to somebody else in pain, and they may find answers as well. And so,
yeah,
wonderful.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, well, I've definitely found my purpose in this pain, and hopefully for those of you that, and I will say this as a person with a disability, that in my research that care receiver, the care receiver side of the caregiver care receiver relationship isn't always recognized. That, I hope that this is the first step towards maybe getting that recognized, and whether or not you have a disability, that you can use this and move forward. And if I've been part of that journey, then that makes it all worth it.
Yeah. In fact, Amy, you have any concluding thoughts that you'd like to share?
Just a thought that was kind of circling around my head. There was one time I saw a friend post on their story on Instagram talking about gratitude. And I think that it can be hard to be positive at times, especially when we're having a low time in our life. But for me, gratitude can really help you see the positive things in your life and what you do have. And this post was talking about how to recognize gratitude and recognize things that you're grateful for. It was saying, think of all the things that you find nostalgic from like your past years in your life, and reflect on what you think you will find nostalgic, like right now, in the future. What will you look back on at this moment in your life and you'll find nostalgic, because that is gratitude right there. And so as I look back on this last year for myself, there was a lot of hard things. Like I remember being in a very tiny apartment where the air conditioning didn't work at all, and not having any friends and being away from family, and it was really hard. But I'll think about the small moments, like me and Mike watching TV together on our crappy couch. Like that makes me happy. Or me watching the sunset from the top of my balcony. I was on the 3rd floor, so I got to see a lot. And even though it's hard taking stuff up those stairs, Like, I got to watch beautiful sunsets because of that. And so I think gratitude can be more than just the happy things in your life, but also saying, hey, this thing was hard, but I got through it, and that means something to me. And it might not mean something to everyone else, but that's okay because it's my journey. And so I'm grateful for all the experiences that I've had, big and small, terrible and wonderful, because it's shaped me into who I am today.
And if you don't mind me asking one more thing, Trent, and that is, this conversation for you, what difference does it make?
I think that you and like what Amy said, like right now, really spoke to me, and I think, you guys have just, I think you've helped remind me of a lot of the resources that I have, and the fact that I'm not alone. So, and that's kind of, like whether or not, I've got the people in the room, or whether or not I'm talking to the podcast listeners, that, we're not alone, and that, we are humanizing mental health at this moment.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Thank you for letting us, that's part of it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you let your caregivers into your life, but you let us into your life. And you let the listeners into your life. And a lot of people are going to lose a lot if you stop doing that.
Thanks, man. That means a lot.
Thank you, Trent.
Yeah. You're welcome, Amy. And thank you for being a part of my journey and continuing on with that, because you being part of my life, just continuing on with that relationship means a lot. Okay, I hope I didn't break the mic there.
No, just being genuine. Yeah. Tears running down my face.
Yeah.
So on that note, why don't we pull things together? We want to thank everyone for joining us on this episode of Humanizing Mental Health. This is Jeremy Alcorn.
This is Trent Akers.
This is Amy Alcorn-Henricks.
Signing out.
See you next time.
This podcast is intended as general information. We are glad that you joined us today. We hope this message has been as meaningful to you as it has been to us. If you're looking for help, you can find us on Facebook at Humanizing Mental Health or at humanizingmentalhealth.ca. Humanizing Mental Health is a plugged-in media production.